Good afternoon. Today, Brittany, Jesse, and I will be sharing a little bit of information with you regarding wildlife captivity. Ultimately, the question that we want to answer is it ethical to keep wildlife captive? To help provide a better understanding of wildlife captivity, we must understand the differences between wildlife itself as well as captive wildlife. Simply defined, wildlife include animals such as mammals, reptiles, and birds that are non-domesticated. This means that they are not kept as pets or used on farms, but instead live naturally in the wild. On the other hand, captive wildlife are animals that are forced out of their natural habitat by humans and live in confinement under human control. This is an issue in today's society because these animals who are kept in captivity are stripped of their five freedoms. These include freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress. Specifically, the animals that are kept in captivity are unable to express normal behaviors, leaving them bored behind cages, and most definitely not ways of supporting their well-being. Instead, humans are using them for human purpose and entertainment, rather than respecting the many different species and their boundaries. Ultimately, do the benefits of handling wildlife outweigh the risks of keeping them in captivity? To further grasp an understanding and form a valid opinion, it is important that everyone essentially view both sides of the story. There are many people who believe passionately that animals can be kept in captivity with little to no negative repercussions. There are a number of different arguments that support their side of the story. For example, they believe that caretakers have the ability to provide environmental enrichment programs in most establishments to provide them with healthy activity and challenges. Environmental enrichment utilizes physical and social surroundings to stimulate the animal's brain. Some of these activities include scent work, food puzzles, and the use of inanimate objects. The point of this via the caretakers is to use enrichment activities for the animals in captivity to alleviate their psychological and physiological welfare. Also, people who believe that it is just to keep animals in captivity believe that this ultimately prevents a number of different species from going extinct. Animals that are living in captivity often have more reproductive potential. Caretakers can pair male and females together to promote reproduction in animals that are very near extinction. Many endangered species have been saved from extinction from these programs, such as the black-footed ferrets. On the other hand, there are equally as valid points against keeping wildlife in captivity. To begin, and arguably the most important aspect, is that humans who are removing the animals from their natural environment impact their five freedoms. When wildlife is removed from their natural environment and placed into captivity, it takes away the animal's ability to express their instinctual behaviors. To further, a number of different species that are kept in captivity instinctually feel the need to roam. However, when they are confined into their enclosures, they have a very limited space to explore, resulting in boredom. Also, animals who are sensitive to environmental change and social interactions will suffer from being held on display in an enclosed area for human entertainment purposes. A number of these animals in captivity suffer from ARB, which is abnormal repetitive behavior. Not only are the animals unable to express themselves naturally, the other main welfare problem are emotional and the stress resulting from these emotions. Another important argument against keeping wildlife in captivity is that the animals become dependent. Animals that are born in captivity often become reliant on the people caring for them, meaning that they will never be able to hunt and even survive in the wild. So referring back to the argument for breeding programs, even if a breeding program is successful in a zoo, it is not successful in the wild. On the other hand, if the owners and caretakers of the animals are irresponsible, the animals suffer greatly. If there are improper feedings as well as confinements, the health of the animals deteriorate dramatically. Here is a short clip of an elephant from the Milwaukee County Zoo. In this clip, we can see an elephant swaying back and forth. This behavior is easily misinterpreted as dancing, but in reality, this elephant is showing signs of distress. It is evident throughout the video that the public is uneducated about the animal's natural behavior and signs of affliction, as they clearly are entertained by the elephant's misery. It may seem like normal behavior for captive elephants, but it is not. This just proves how stressed animals are all around the world while being held in captivity. There are a number of different facts that we have reviewed to further develop an understanding and an opinion in regards to whether or not it is ethical to keep wildlife captive. Currently, there is approximately 800,000 animals being held in zoos or aquariums, with 6,000 different species, 1,000 of which are endangered or threatened. This means that even though the endangered species are being kept alive in captivity, they will never be able to reproduce in the wild. Also, there have been 1,610 reported incidents with exotic animals being held as pets, and 75 deaths between 1990 and 2011. It is estimated that there are between 5,000 and 7,000 tigers being kept as pets, and not just in zoos in the US alone, whereas there are only 3,890 tigers living naturally in the wild. Tigers and lions have around 18,000 times less space in zoos than they would in the wild. Polar bears actually have 1 million times less space. This goes to show that the larger animals that are being held in captivity truly do not have the ability to express themselves. When it comes to the life expectancy of wildlife versus captive animals, wild African elephants live 3 times longer than the ones kept in zoos. In zoos, 40% of lion cubs die before they are 1 month old, and in the wild, only an estimated 30% of cubs die before they are 6 months. A third of those deaths due to factors which aren't possible in zoos, for example, predation. After analyzing both arguments for and against, as a group, we have decided that we are ultimately against keeping wildlife in captivity. Although there are few benefits for keeping a number of species in captivity, ultimately the negatives far outweigh the positives. We believe that it is unfair for humans to remove wildlife from their natural habitats and bring them into smaller, confined spaces. Keeping the animals behind cages entrapped in significantly too small tanks for people to watch them should not compromise their care and well-being. However, there is ample evidence to prove that it does. This takes away from their ability to express their natural behavior and the freedom from fear and distress. There are some of the 5 freedoms that many people are trying to promote, yet we are taking these rights away from them by keeping them in captivity. Rightfully so. As a group, we have reviewed a number of different protective acts in order to further prevent keeping wildlife captive. For example, the Animal Welfare Act protects a number of different warm-blooded animals from being held in captivity. However, the protection here is limited. CITES is an organization that protects the international trade of animals and helps the countries that are involved to cooperate to protect endangered and vulnerable species. Also, the Endangered Species Act is utilized to protect animals that are endangered. It outlines federal policies including penalties for any violation of the act. In 2014, a lawsuit was successfully brought against the roadside zoo called the Cricket Hollow Animal Park. In addition to these laws, there are a number of different local laws that help to further protect animals from captivity, such as requiring a permit to own such an animal or banning it altogether. We believe that anyone has the ability to join a campaign or give their support to groups and associations fighting for the rights of captive wildlife as well as exotic pets. In conclusion, it is not ethical to keep wildlife in captivity for any reason. There are obvious pros and cons to keeping wildlife in zoos or other facilities. However, animals kept in cages tend to be sicker overall and not live as long as animals in the wild. Many animals in this situation are used for profit, not for the benefit of their species. We found that the negatives of keeping captive wildlife far outweigh the positives. Thank you for tuning in and spending some time educating yourself on wildlife captivity.